It's my great privilege to bring Sal Khan to the podium. Sal is a most dedicated father and husband, a transformative leader, an author, an entrepreneur, and the world's most recognized teacher, at least by your voice anyhow. So please join me in welcoming founder and CEO of Khan Academy, Sal Khan.
Oh, thank you for that great introduction. I think you added that dedicated father and husband part, because last night I'm very shameless about showing people family pictures, so it was very, yeah. And I still get a kick out of when people mention the Forbes cover, because I like to point out that I think I was the poorest person ever on the cover of Forbes. So I'm not poor, though. I have a lot to be thankful for, and just in dollar wealth, definitely. So thank you so much for having me here. This is very, very, very exciting. I definitely huge thanks to the J.K. Albertson Foundation, to Jamie and Roger and their entire team, the ambassadors, the Khan Academy team, everyone here, frankly, who's out here. And this is pretty exciting to me because, as Jamie mentioned, in 2012 I had come out here, and at that time Khan Academy was starting to gain some traction, but it hadn't gotten to the levels that we are now, and as Jamie mentioned, that was right before a whole wave of more attention to Khan Academy. But Idaho was almost a wake-up call for me. It was the first time where I came, and it was really kind of a whole state that made Khan Academy feel welcomed. It felt like we could do things on a bigger scale. It felt like, I woke up to the fact that, wow, we could be so relevant not just in suburbs of Silicon Valley, but in Idaho. And it was, this really fun thing where, I was born and raised in New Orleans, and I remember reading books about kind of settling the West and this pioneer spirit, and I'd come out here and I was like, you can kind of feel it. And people would talk about their grandparents or their great-grandparents, and I was like, wow, this is all real. And I think it continues on in terms of just what people are willing to try, how they're willing to try it, and it's just a really refreshing thing for me and our entire team, and it makes us very hopeful about what, and made me very hopeful, and then that hope was justified over the next few years as the incredible, actually all of y'all here, but especially the Albertson Foundation team, continue to do incredible things. I mean, when we go around the world now and people ask us to cite where are interesting things happening with Khan Academy. And this is, we're meeting with the Minister of Education of India. We'll say, hey, there's a state in the U.S. called Idaho, and they say, oh, I've heard of Idaho, and they're doing this and that, and so it's very exciting. Just to give all of y'all a little bit of background, and I think a lot of y'all have a sense of how Khan Academy started, but I'll give a little bit of the story just because I think it's to a large degree relevant to this, and I think it hopefully puts even what we're doing now in a longer arc of where all of this could go. A little over 11 years ago, this started somewhat happenstance. I was tutoring a cousin in mathematics. Her name was Nadia. She was 12 years old. I was an analyst at a hedge fund in Boston. She had just taken a placement exam. She was in New Orleans, and they put her into a slower math class. And when I heard about that, she was visiting me right after my wedding. This was in 2004. I offered to tutor her. Her parents hadn't gone to school in this country, so I don't think they fully understood what this tracking was all about or what the implications might be. So we started working together every day after work for me, after school for her. I would get on the phone. We would start working through what initially was unit conversion. And for Nadia, it was really interesting. She had just convinced herself she wasn't good at math. She was just convinced that she just somehow didn't have this math gene. And that made the first couple of weeks difficult. She just, was a little bit checked out. But after enough mentorship and coaching, she started to engage. It took about a week or two. She got unit conversion. Then she started to catch up with her class. Then, frankly, she got a little ahead of her class. And at that point, I became what I call a tiger cousin. And I called up her school, and I said, I really think Nadia Rahman should retake that placement exam from last year. I'm sure a lot of y'all appreciate these calls. and they said, who are you? And I'm her cousin. And somewhat surprisingly, they let her retake that exam. And that same Nadia that literally a few months ago was being placed into what amounted to a remedial math class, was now being placed into an advanced math class. And that same Nadia, who a few weeks ago thought that she didn't have the math gene, who thought that she wasn't capable of learning unit conversion, that next summer started taking classes at the local university and just kept racing ahead from there. And so I was hooked. I said, this was a small little intervention on my part, half an hour a day. It was also, selfishly, it was fun for me. I liked my day job, but I got a kick out of a lot of the stuff that you learn in school, the algebra, the physics, the science, the history. And so to be able to revisit with my cousins was fun, and then it was also a fun way of forming a bond with family members that I wasn't in the same town as, and it seemed like it was helping. So I started working with her younger brothers, and then a few things happened. The firm I was working for was very small. It was me, my boss, and his dog. We moved. The dog was the chief economist. We moved to Northern California. My boss's wife became a professor at Stanford Law. But more importantly, word got around the family that free tutoring was going on. So I found myself every day after work with about 10, 15 cousins, family, friends all over the country, scheduling these sessions. And all of my friends knew that I had this crazy project with my cousins, and my background was in software, and I saw a common theme was that a lot of them had gaps in their knowledge. A lot of, even the ones that were A students in algebra, every now and then I would give them dividing a 2-digit decimal, and they would be a little bit shaky. I said they need a little bit more practice to really fill in their Swiss cheese gaps. And so the first Khan Academy had nothing to do with videos. It was a web software, so that before that I was pointing them to different websites and giving them exercises. So let me just write these, generate the questions, and then I, as their tutor, could keep track of what they were doing. And that way, when we get on the phone, I could dig a little bit deeper or fine tune our sessions. And I was showing this off at a dinner party. This is fall of 2006 now. And the host of the party, his name's Zuli Ramzan, to give him full credit, he says, well, Sal, this is all cool, this project you have, but how are you, my only question is, how are you scaling your actual lessons? And I said, Zuli, that's a good question. I'm actually not. It's really hard to do with 10 cousins what I was able to do with 1 or 2 or 3 cousins. And Zuli said, well, I have an idea. Why don't you record some of your lessons as videos and upload them onto YouTube for your family? And I immediately thought it was a horrible idea. I said, no. YouTube is for cats playing piano. It is not for serious mathematics. But I got over the idea that it wasn't my idea, and I decided to give it a shot. And those first few videos, they're still up there. You can sort on our YouTube channel by a date uploaded. This was November of 2006. They were just the things that I saw my cousins were having trouble with. I think it was least common multiple, adding fractions with unlike denominators, basic adding and subtraction of negative numbers. And I just started putting it out there, and I probably, that first month, I probably made about 20 or 30 videos, and I started telling my cousins, look, watch these ahead of time. That way, when we get on the phone, we can dig a little bit deeper. And then I asked them for feedback, and they somewhat famously and backhandedly told me that they like me better on YouTube than in person. And it's good to introspect on what they were saying. They weren't saying that they didn't appreciate me as someone who's taking time out, who's calling them, who is motivating them, who is forming a connection. I think it's really important, especially when you're a teenager, early preteen, to have a bond with a family member who's maybe not your parents, but that you can talk about things. They appreciated that. They appreciated having someone to ask questions for. But what they were saying with that feedback is when you're trying to learn something new, something that might seem a little bit intimidating, it's sometimes stressful to have your cousin, no matter how non-judgmental he's trying to be, waiting for you to learn it. Look, x is equal to y. Do you get that? And, oh, yeah, it makes sense. You feel pressure to just move on, even though you might only understand it 70%. And then later that night, when you have to do your homework, it doesn't make sense anymore, and you're trying to remember what your cousin or your teacher or your parent told you. But now they could get it at their own time and pace. If you're an algebra student and you're a little bit shaky on your dividing decimals, you don't have to be embarrassed. You can just review it. If you're a calculus student, shaky on your algebra, you can just review it. No judgment. If you're a parent who has to help your 7th grader, no judgment. You can just review it. So I kept going, taking that as positive feedback, uploading more and more videos, and then it soon became clear that people who are not my cousins were watching. And at first the view count just started to grow, and then the comments started to come in, and a lot of those early comments were just simple thank yous. And even that I thought was a pretty big deal. Most of the comments on YouTube are not thank you. They are a little edgier than that. But then the comments got more intense. This is the reason I was able to pass my algebra class. This is the reason why after leaving the military I was able to go back to college. I remember in those early days I got a letter from a mother saying that both of her sons had a learning disability, and these videos were the only reason why they were able to keep up with her class, and because of that, her and her entire family were praying for me and my entire family. And I remember I brought my wife over. I'm like, this is incredible, and you can imagine how strange that felt for me on some level. You have to remember my day job, I was an analyst at a hedge fund. I wasn't used to people praying for me, at least in that way. And so I kept going. Long story short, this was late 2006, 2007 that I started making those first videos. I started making almost 4 or 5 videos every day. I was working market hours, and since I was on the West Coast, I would get out of work by the afternoon. My wife was a medical resident, so I had a lot of time. And I just kept going. And so by 2008, at that point, there was about 10,000 people who were using it on a regular basis. I set it up as a not-for-profit with a mission of a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. 2009, it felt like, even in 2008, I thought, well, I'll continue this finance job and until I have enough savings and maybe I could do this on my own, or maybe this will just be a hobby for the next 10 years. But by 2009, it was overtaking my life. We had saved up some money, essentially for a down payment on a house, but both my wife and I agreed that it felt like something special was here. We were getting, at this point, tens of testimonials almost every day, and that now there's about 100,000 people using it. So I took the plunge. And I think anytime you do anything entrepreneurial, it takes a little bit of that delusional optimism. You just assume, look, the social return on investment here is so high, surely this will be funded. But you start having a lot of meetings with a lot of folks, and meeting 4, meeting 5, this isn't exactly what we fund. Our budget is already allocated this year, come back next year. And so you can imagine 7, 8 months into it, it got quite stressful. I was questioning what I had done. Could I even go back to my old career? Our first child had just been born. We were digging into savings, about $5,000 a month. And right about then, and I always tell the story because this really, in my mind, was one of the key moments in the history of Khan Academy. Right around then, right at kind of one of my darkest moments, all of a sudden a $10,000 donation came in. And so I immediately see who it is. She was local, the local town, Palo Alto. Her name's Ann Doer. And I immediately email her, and I said, thank you so much for this incredibly generous donation. This is the largest donation that Khan Academy has ever received. If we were a physical school, you would now have a building named after you. And which is a good deal, I now hear. But Ann immediately responded back, said, well, I use Khan Academy with my daughters. I use it myself. I was actually doing a whole series on the financial crisis and things like that. And she said, I'd love to learn more about what you're doing. And we met a couple of days later in an Indian buffet restaurant in downtown Palo Alto. And Ann asks me, what's your goal? And I told her, look, when you fill out that paperwork with the IRS and they ask you your mission, I filled out a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And Ann said, well, that's ambitious. How do you see yourself doing that? And I made it clear to her. I was like, look, that's a mission statement. I don't plan on just being able to check it off this weekend and then move on to healthcare or something. But I used to walk around with a notebook of those testimonials. I showed her the screenshots of the software. I showed her the view count of how the videos were growing. And I told her, I was like, I could imagine that this could be made into the languages of the world. I had some primitive tools for teachers that were essentially based on the tools that I had made for myself early on. I wanted to make more software, interactive things, ways for students to work with each other, essentially unlimited exercises. I already had kind of the seed at that point. And Ann said, you've made a surprising amount of progress. I only have one question. How are you supporting yourself? And in as proud of a way as possible, I said, I'm not. And Ann kind of registers that, and we pay the bill, and we part ways. And 10 minutes later, I'm driving into my driveway, and I get a text message from Ann, and it says, you really need to be supporting yourself. I've just wired you $100,000. So that was a good day. That was really good. And I consider that kind of the inflection point. You could imagine. I was like, wow. Not only was it the financial resources to do this, but I think even more important was the belief from someone to say, no, I think this is a project worth doing. No, you haven't made a blunder with your with your life. And then, frankly, just kept gaining more and more momentum. And today, Khan Academy is much more than just me. We're a team of approaching 100 full-time folks in Mountain View, but it's much more than just that. We have hundreds of volunteers. We have the incredible ambassadors that we've met. We have incredible partners like the Albertson Foundation that really feel just part of the same organization. And what I tell everyone as we kind of, Khan Academy now has 36 million registered users. We estimate last year roughly 1 in 3 American students used Khan Academy at least once. And to a large degree, we think of what Khan Academy is today as just the beginning. As we internationalize, as we create more tools for teachers, make it more relevant to what's going on in schools, simulations, et cetera, we think we can reach together hundreds of millions, billions of students, let them fully reach their potential. And if they're in our world, the English-speaking world, the developed world, and they have great teachers, they have great schools, well, Khan Academy, we hope, can be a tool to liberate that so that students can get explanations when they need, they get exercises, allow them to work at their own time and pace. And so when they come to the classroom, they can form deeper bonds with the teacher, they can connect with each other, they can have peer learning, they can have Socratic dialogue. And if we're talking about parts of the planet where students don't have schools, if we're talking about villages in rural India or sub-Saharan Africa, that we can start to give them something so that you can imagine you have a low-cost smartphone in 5 years and you can start to self-educate yourself and maybe even prove what you know and start to plug into the economy. And when you think about what the potential's there, I always like to give a little bit of a thought experiment. If you were to go back in time about 400 years to Western Europe, which even then was one of the more literate parts of the planet, you would see that about 15% of the population knew how to read, about 20% of men and 10% of women. And I suspect that if you ask someone who knew how to read, say a member of the clergy, what percentage of the population do you think is even capable of reading? If you had the perfect education system, my guess is they would say, well, maybe 30, 40% with a perfect education system. But you fast forward today, you see that, well, that would have been a wildly pessimistic prediction, that pretty close to 100% of the population is capable of reading. But if I were to ask any of y'all, what percentage of the population do you think is capable of conducting cancer research? What percentage of the population do you think is capable of creating the next great internet startup, or solving energy problems for the world, or writing the next great novel? I think a lot of y'all might say, well, maybe it's the great education system, maybe 20, 30, 40%. But what if that assumption is based on just our experience, an experience in a system where, just like I saw with my cousins, a lot of students we push them together at a fixed pace. They start to accumulate gaps, and as they have those gaps, all of a sudden they hit a wall. And they hit that wall in algebra, not because algebra is hard or because the student doesn't have the innate ability, but because they didn't understand the exponents. What if we allow them to work at their own time and pace, fill in those gaps so that they don't hit those walls? Maybe the number of students who can contribute to cancer research or create the next business is actually 80% or 90% or maybe even close to 100%. And when you think about that, and I actually do think that is true, you can imagine that the next 10, 20, 30 years, if we all work together, is going to be a very exciting time to live. And so with that, coming back to what we're doing today, right now, I'm really excited to be here for this whole LearnStorm challenge, because LearnStorm is all about giving the students agency, giving teachers agency, celebrating what is probably the most important part of the education experience that's often kind of not front and center. It's the idea of mindset. It's the idea that if you're able to believe you're capable of learning. Nadia, 10, 12 years ago, just thought she wasn't capable of learning. But if she can go from that fixed mindset to a growth mindset where, hey, I can step out of my comfort zone. If I get something wrong, it doesn't mean that I'm not smart. It just means that I haven't learned it yet. And my brain's actually going to grow more when I get that question wrong and reflect on it and keep going. And so this is a really exciting thing because we're just started. Idaho is the first statewide pilot, and I think we're going to do some really, really, really exciting things together. And so with that, I want to introduce my colleague, Mia Lincoln, to talk more about LearnStorm, Idaho. Thank you.
Thank you, Sal. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Recognize a lot of you in the audience, which makes me feel really good because I've been running around here, and when I say here, I mean the state of Idaho, since November of this year, talking to you about LearnStorm. And so what is it? What are we all here for? What are we kicking off today? LearnStorm is a math challenge for 3rd through 12th graders that's available across the state of Idaho. But it's not just available in the state of Idaho. It's also happening in 3 other places: the San Francisco Bay Area, where we piloted it last year, the greater Chicago area, Chicagoland as they call it over there, and the whole country of Ireland. And so Idaho is the first statewide rollout of this program that is designed to really do 3 things. And those 3 things are, number 1, to help students build their Common Core math abilities, build their math skills, and they're able to do that on the Khan Academy platform that our team has designed. As Sal was saying, they have almost unlimited exercises that they can continue to practice, a personalized learning software that's constantly adapting to their abilities, helping them push forward while filling in the gaps of things that they haven't learned yet. And it's also designed to help them build their math confidence and to really show them that, yeah, LearnStorm's for me. Just because I didn't opt into some other math competition or math challenge, LearnStorm is designed for me. It's designed for me if I am the student that is at the front of my math class, getting the A's on every test. It's for me if I'm the student that's working diligently in class and my teacher's always telling me, keep working, it's gonna pay off. Then LearnStorm, that program, is coming in behind and motivating you and saying, see, here, it's paying off. See, your hustle points are calculating, your mastery points are calculating, your badges are accumulating, and you can see how your school's doing on the leaderboards. It's really helping them build that confidence to say, oh, I do belong in this world of learning math. And then it's designed to help them build their growth mindset. And that's the 3rd thing, and the thing that we're really, really excited about, because the growth mindset is a powerful tool. Whether you're a 3rd grader learning how to add and subtract fractions, or whether you're in 8th grade getting ready to take the plunge into high school and trying to get your math ready for high school so that you get tracked appropriately and not set in one of the slower math tracks, or maybe it's your freshman year of college and it's the first time you're taking a math class in college and you get your first C and you're like, oh my goodness, maybe I'm not a math person. I'm going to avoid that for the rest of my life. The growth mindset, what it does is that it equips you to, whenever you hit that hurdle, whether it's in 3rd grade or if it's freshman year of college or your first job, when you're being asked to do something that you've never learned or you've never done before, it equips you to persevere through that moment when you hit that hurdle and to not avoid it, to not shy away from it, to show grit, to show perseverance, and to really break through. And what LearnStorm does is it tries to help students get to that point where they are struggling, to help them break through, giving them the strategies of the growth mindset to work through that moment, and then celebrating them like crazy when they do break through in that moment through lots of different special things that we're going to be doing over the course of the next couple of weeks here. So LearnStorm is for 9 weeks available for students. It launched on Friday, so students can start earning points now. Schools and individual students across the state can continue signing up all the way until the end of the challenge. There's 3 cups that they're participating in, which are going to be really exciting for the individuals and the schools. And at the end, we're going to have a big in-person final celebration where students from around the state are going to gather here in Boise to be celebrated for the learning that they've accomplished all across the state together. And so in the Bay Area last year, we had 73,000 students participate in LearnStorm, and we had over 13 million math problems solved collectively. And so I can't wait to see what rolling this program out across the whole state, especially a state like Idaho, where people pick up the torch and they really run with it in this kind of pioneering spirit that they have to just tackle this program together. So that's what we're here kicking off today. Thank you for opening the doors to Idaho to me in November. It really started with the Albertson's Family Foundation, Jamie Jo, and your family, and just the support that Khan Academy has felt. When it came time to select which region the different outreach coordinators for Khan Academy were going to be headed to, it's really no secret that I pushed really, really hard for Idaho. And I like to joke, I feel like I had a little bit of an advantage here because I did the program last year, and so I knew its power and its potential. And I also had a teeny tiny bit of seniority. And so when it came around, I said, I'd really like to be in Idaho. And the reason there being not only that I love fly fishing, not only that I really love hiking and camping and think that this is one of the most beautiful states. I love the Pacific Northwest. I also had heard from everybody on our Khan Academy team that there was something special in this state. They all came back from the Khan Academy in Idaho project, came back to Mountain View, and Becca, our designer, she's in the back here, she said, Mia, it's different there. There's this energy, there's this enthusiasm, there's this Idaho niceness that you just don't see anywhere else. And you are joining a family when you work on a project there. And so I said, I think that's where I would like to be a part of delivering LearnStorm, and I can't think of a better place to do it because this program thrives off of community. It thrives off of grit and perseverance, which I think across the state is something at the State Department of Education all the way down to in the classrooms that people are starting to embrace and push for more in this state. So I just couldn't have thought to be a place that I would have rather been a part of bringing LearnStorm to life in 2016. And so in the last 8 weeks leading up to that, I knew that I wouldn't be able to do that by myself, and so did Khan Academy. And as we continue to think more about how to make Khan Academy available to anyone, anywhere, we are having to recruit a family around the world. And so this is our first year doing that with the Khan Academy Ambassador Program. We have our amazing ambassadors in the back. I just want to say one more time, thank you. They've went through a very rigorous application process. They're full-time teachers and working in schools themselves, dedicating all of their hours to students around this state. And then in addition to that, they're on Google Hangout and Skype calls with me late into the evening talking about how we can make Khan Academy better for students and for teachers, how we can make LearnStorm more accessible to students across the state. So they are my team on the ground here in Idaho, and they just do a fantastic job both making me feel welcome here and making me just more effective on the ground at trying to get LearnStorm in the hands of more students everywhere. So thank you. If we give them a round of applause, that'd be great. A few meetings into my first trip here, the world started to feel very small. So I would be in a meeting, and then I would go to the next one, and the person would say, oh, hi, so-and-so just called and told me all about LearnStorm. And I was like, that's funny, I just met with them 10 minutes ago. And so the world just got very small, and that was really thanks to Blossom and, again, her team at the Albertson's Family Foundation, all of the introductions that you all were able to make to me, and just the trust that it took to kind of open those doors to a new face here in Idaho. I couldn't have been better set up to meet kind of the community that we need to make LearnStorm possible here. So thank you to the Albertson's Family Foundation. I've since met with over 50 community organizations since I've been started running around. I've met with over 25 school districts, all the way from Boise and Nampa and Kuna and Cascia over to Jerome and Pocatello, Idaho Falls, Coeur d'Alene. And so they've seen my face and they've heard the LearnStorm story. And we couldn't be more excited to have a really strong start with over 25,000 students signed up across the state right before we even launched. And after all of those meetings, I really do feel like I'm part of the best of Idaho, because in every single one of those meetings, you kind of prepare yourself. You're like, oh, that one went really well. They were really enthusiastic. I have yet to have a meeting where I left and I was like, I don't know if they liked it or not. There's just this energy and enthusiasm to kind of take this free learning supplementary resource and to get that in the hands of students. And I've had people that I've met with then go and meet with their next 10 people and their next 10 people and their next 10 people. And at a certain point, I stopped doing the outreach to people just kind of blindly, and the outreach kind of started coming to me of people saying, hey, I'd love to set up time to talk with you about LearnStorm. It sounds like it's really exciting. And so it didn't take very long for that flow to kind kind of establish itself. Everybody from Lieutenant Governor Brad Little all the way over to the State Board of Education, the State Department of Education, the Idaho Library Commission, After School Network, NNU, Boys and Girls Clubs, the YMCA, everybody has really come to the table and said, we want to find ways to get this into the hands of more students across the state. And in addition to those groups, there's a select few that have really come to the table in a big way to help make LearnStorm possible, and we're continuing to do that. So over the course of the next couple of weeks, we're going to take the early support that we've had from STEM Bus USA, who you might be familiar with. They have their technologically tricked out STEM buses that drive around the state to try and get students really, really excited about STEM. They're helping us out in a big way. We've also had the Boise State Broncos, who have brought the star power of their fantastic student athletes. They're part of what's going to make our kickoff event at the Nampa School District at LearnStorm Middle School today really, really special and exciting for students. We also have definitely the pioneering and I'll say competitive spirit of the Nampa School District in full force behind the LearnStorm program. It wasn't, well, you know, how many students should we sign up, or how fast can we get to 100% signed up in Nampa? That was the challenge that we kind of problem solved together, and amazing teachers and principals, including Greg Heidemann over here of Lone Star Middle School, picked up this challenge. They presented it to their teachers and said, we want to be first to 100%. And so we're hosting the kickoff event at their district later on today. And then we realized this in the Bay Area last year, and we knew that it was going to be something that we would have to tackle here in Idaho as well, that we have this amazing program, LearnStorm, and this amazing free resource, Khan Academy, and it's available to anyone, anywhere that has an internet connection and a device, and we know that that's still not everybody. And so we're working currently to find and support innovative educators in underserved classrooms across the state of Idaho who have demonstrated a clear need and a plan for the effective use of technology in their classrooms to say, here's LearnStorm, and here's the support that you're going to need to make it happen in your classroom. So we acknowledge that that's not yet everyone, and we're going to do our best working with community members here to help give those classrooms and teachers support. Two organizations that have already come on board, in addition to a broader funder that we have for the program, the Morgridge Family Foundation. We've had here the STEM Action Center and the Micron Foundation in Idaho that when we came, it wasn't, again, we weren't even talking about this innovation seed grant at that point yet. We were just talking about the program more broadly, and it really was whatever we can do. And so they've partnered with us early to help make LearnStorm accessible and other online resources, including Khan Academy, more accessible to students around the state. So if I could please have Angela Hemingway from the STEM Action Center and Laurie Anderson from the Micron Foundation join me up on the stage now with Sal. We'd love to just have a moment of recognition, take a quick photo, and please give them a round of applause. Thank you. Another round of applause. So together, we've already been able to build huge momentum for LearnStorm across the state of Idaho, and we're just getting started. So if you haven't heard from me yet, don't be surprised if you get an email in the next couple of weeks, because we're continuing to seek partners across the state of Idaho to help make this program feel really, really special for students in every pocket of the state. And my personal goal is to, at that final celebration that we have in Boise, make sure that we have a representative from every pocket of this state there so that they can meet other students and work with them and realize that, wow, the state of Idaho, that's a great place to be a student these days.